Hey, welcome back to another episode. Today, we're diving into those real world lessons with a veteran who's made it his mission to help others succeed. Frank McGaha is a U.S. Navy veteran, former police officer, and training director at Armageddon Consulting and Training, where he specializes in helping aspiring and current law enforcement professionals succeed through recruiting, coaching, and career development. After serving as a naval helicopter crew chief, from 2009 to 2015, he transitioned into law enforcement and he rose to be the leading police officer before launching his independent training firm in 2020. With a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice and Law Enforcement Administration from the University of Maryland Global Campus, he's skilled in training, public speaking, and building high-performing teams. Frank is passionate about mentorship, and it shows. The same guidance that fueled his own success and transitions, he now uses on others to help them succeed. He hosts Becoming a Police Officer podcast to share insider tips and hiring processes and leadership in policing. His mission is to enhance the profession by equipping officers to make positive community impact. So, Frank, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we were able to link up and make this happen. So why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I'll give you the quick rundown. Originally born in Southern New Jersey, high school through that, and then I immediately enlisted in the United States Navy right after or not long after I turned 18, left for boot camp when I was 19 through the delayed entry program. 6 years, 3 full-length deployments to the Middle East and 1 short-term tactics deployment to the Middle East. After that, I knew I always had an interest in law enforcement, so I knew I wanted to come out and get into law enforcement, but I was also an avid outdoorsman, so I loved being outside. So what's the best thing you could do? And I looked into conservation law enforcement. It worked out because a lot of my youth I spent in Western North Carolina. I loved it. I knew that's where my family was from. I knew I definitely wanted to end up back there. And one of the 4 academies for the National Park Service law enforcement program was in Western North Carolina. So it worked out well. Went through there. I was lucky, good mentorship. I was named sergeant of that academy. Did some time as the backcountry law enforcement ranger in the Smoky Mountain National Park. Best job ever. Not really conducive for a family because you're out in the woods all the time, but best job ever. Lateral and transferred up to D.C. with another 3-letter agency up there, GPO, Government Publishing Office Police, or another federal agency. My career really exploded. Once again, can't take credit for it. Really good leaders and mentors up there that helped guide me. Got into a lot of different aspects. I was able to work my way up to the officer in charge of our Federal Special Weapons Unit, as well as the lead protection officer for our presidential appointees, one under President Obama, one under President Trump. And from there, I knew the military was starting to catch up to me. Some of my older injuries were starting to catch up to me, but I found a passion for instruction. So I wound up picking up a bunch of instructorships and transitioning into that. And that's where I'm at now, running Armageddon Consulting and Training as their law enforcement training director and helping candidates succeed in getting into law enforcement as well as succeeding through their careers.
Awesome. Incredibly impressive career. And you're so young and, you've got a lot that you got going on. So from your veteran perspective, what is it that you learned from the Navy that transitioned well into your law enforcement?
Everything, absolutely I don't think there's a single thing that I don't apply from my military experience in the Navy. I'll be 100% candid. I joined the Navy. I did all the pre-training to go in as a SO, as a Navy SEAL, and go through SEALs training. After I rotated out to Coronado, not too long into my training, I had stress fractures beforehand. They got even worse out there, turned into compression fractures after running an obstacle course. And I thought I was getting kicked out. I really did. I thankfully had a really good senior chief. When you leave Coronado, they just move you to North Island, and they moved me to North Island. And that senior chief managed to kind of guide me and get me in with aviation as a helicopter crewman, and which was kind of in its own special aspect. And he told me, hey, if you do this, you could still, probably work in NSW and do stuff along those lines. I said, great, sign me up. And he told me, he's like, if you get injured again, though, they're definitely kicking you out of the Navy. And I was like, okay, it won't ever happen, I promise. So I roll out to Pensacola, Florida, right, where they do their naval aircrew training. And while I was out there, I've said this before, I was doing 6 miles, almost 6 miles soft sand beach runs, barefoot a lot, to try and strengthen my legs to make sure that never happened. But all that came from just the limited training I got when I was going through BUDS in mental toughness. And then I got into aircrew, which my rate was called an AWS. That's what other militaries would call it, an MOS, pretty much your job. And when I got into AWS, just good guidance, good mentors all the way through. And then I realized how impactful they'd been. Of course, you don't recognize it when you're younger and, and all full of ego. But as I got older, I was like, man, they've really played a huge impact on my life. And I try to be that for other people now. There's not there's not one thing that I don't think I took away. We had some helicopter mishaps in the Navy that winded up having some major decision making on my part, and made me start taking things more seriously. But all throughout, I won't sit here and the camaraderie, the lessons learned, the military bearing, the situational awareness, the physical fitness, the mental toughness. There's not a single thing that I don't use today.
Awesome. And when you were transitioning out, because you said you did 6 years, and then you're like, I'm gonna do something else. Did you know that you wanted to go into law enforcement? Like, what did that transition process look like for you? Everybody's is different, but how was yours?
Yeah, I will say the military tries. I don't know if they succeed, but they try to give you a transition assistance program. It's my rate as a helicopter crew chief doesn't really translate to any civilian job. I had a little bit of college that I had done prior and while I was in, but I knew that I always was interested in law enforcement. And then as I was getting out, I was, once again, good leadership, mentorship. I always planned ahead. I wound up doing a hybrid EMT program. And I was just really lucky that all the time I worked, I did a hybrid EMT program. I actually started on my last deployment. And then I finished it on terminal leave. My deployments were usually so long, and I did enough of them towards the end there that I managed to save up almost 4 months of terminal leave. So
Wow.
my entire academy while I was there was getting paid by the military pretty much, and then I got recruited right out of the police academy. So that transition was difficult. It was definitely hard to go from military to civilian life, especially a lot of transitioning military members can probably attest to this, or veterans. It's civilian life is a lot different. Civilians tend to think different and have different focuses, where veterans still have that, hey, we don't care, get the job done kind of mentality. Not that civilians don't get the job done, but it was a wake up call, right? Just like anyone else. I would say that when I transitioned out, a lot of leadership didn't think I was serious. I remember the day I signed my page to get out. They told me, hey, you're going back over to the Middle East. I said, when? They're like, at the end of the January. And I literally started terminal leave December 24th of 2014. I think it was 2014. I don't know. It's been a while. But I started terminal leave that time, and I said, oh, I'm not going out. I'll go back. I'll be out. And well, actually, they said, why? You don't think you'll be recovered? Because I just had a hip surgery from one of those helicopter mishaps in the past. And they asked me, hey, you don't think you'll be recovered by then? I was like, no, I should be recovered, but I'll be out of the Navy at that point. The officers are coming out of offices at this point, and I'm getting, not yelled at, but, oh, you're going to wake up on your mom's couch. You're not going to be able to. I was like, funny thing, you all taught me well enough. I'm already accepted into the police academy. I'm already currently in my EMT program. And yeah, I mean, I pretty much have it all set up. I'm not using GI Bill. I'm doing this and getting recruited and going straight into law enforcement. And they're like, oh, you're not going to do it. You're not, because I was pretty Joe Navy, Hey, I could have did it for 20 years. As you go through those time, like, oh, I'm only going to do a one term, and then I could do the Navy for 20 years. And then you're saying, well, I do have these other plans I want to do, and I really wanted to start a family, and I think that the Navy was conducive for that. So to wrap it all up, it was pretty much, hey, you're not going to sign. And then I said, print it out, and they're like, take it home, think about this, and I just signed it right then and there. And I'm glad I did it that way, because I think if I would have hesitated, I don't think I would have signed that page, because I was comfortable. It was a job that I was happy to do. I like doing it. Yeah, it was something that I feel I could have done 20 years if I wanted to take that road.
Yeah, you mentioned something because you said you were comfortable, right? So compared to like the unknown, or
yeah, I mean, that's fearful in itself, right? I mean, I was 22 when I bought my first house, right? Deploying to the Middle East, I was making enough money for a single male to live on. Financially, I was comfortable. I knew the job well. I liked doing the job. I mean, I always say, your 10 best days in the military will not outweigh your one worst day. That's the way I really feel about it. But at the end of the day, the camaraderie was there. I mean, you'll never have that type of camaraderie. Even in law enforcement, I still don't think it touches military. So I think it's close, but I don't think it touches it. So yeah, I was comfortable. I felt that, hey, if I stayed in, it would be something that I wouldn't I wouldn't have a problem going all the way till retirement. I know if I did one more enlistment, I was going to try to make it all the way till retirement if they would have kept me.
Yeah, I think they would have kept you. And I say that I'm going to quit every 3 to 4 years anyway, and I didn't. So lucky for you, you were able to sign and get out. So when you got out, you transitioned into law enforcement, and you did really well. Did you notice that there was a lack of leadership training in law enforcement, or do you think it was something that it was like, okay, we trained you up at the police academy and you're good?
No, I think it's the other way around. So if you become the head of an agency or the chief of police or a sheriff, right, and you get elected sheriff, you're pretty much automatically invited to the FBI for the leadership academy. I mean, I shouldn't say automatically, I'm over speaking there, but that option's there and a lot of people do it. The problem is I don't see that leadership, just specifically talking to leadership training, but I don't see that trickle all the way down to the junior individuals. I think the training's there if you want to get it. Perfect example is I used to get some slack from my fellow colleagues up at GPO when I would put in for instructorships and everything. They're like, oh, you're always putting in, you're always getting selected, you're always getting selected. I said, well, how many did you put in this year? They said 1. I was like, well, I did 15 and I only got picked up for 2. So that's the difference, right? And then I remember specifically my chief one time called me into his office and I was like, oh, this can't be good. Right. And I go in there, my colleagues in there, and it's a buddy I went through FLETC with, my other police academy. And my chief said, hey, read this right up to go to additional training. I read it. Like, okay. He's like, what's your thoughts on it? I was like, sir, I'd rather not get involved in this. He's like, chief tells you to do something, you do it. I mean, I think it's one-sided. He's like, elaborate on that. I was like, it says how it's going to benefit the officer, but not anyone else. He's like, okay, where's your last write-up? I was like, it'd be on my work laptop, sir. He's like, go get it for me. So I go get it, bring it up. And in it, instead of it's I, it's we, or how the department will benefit from me going and becoming a tactical medicine instructor, because then I can come back and teach tactical medicine to the entire department. And that's where I found the real gap in training was, one, officers weren't getting that training, and chief gets that training, passes it down to their leader or to their next level, and that might make it down to supervision or management. But management doesn't want to share that. And I shouldn't say they don't want to share it. Sometimes they just don't share it, right? Whether it's task saturated, short-staffed, whatever. But it doesn't trickle all the way down to the lowest officer. So then when the lowest officer makes a mistake, that chief says, we just had this in leadership training. What? Well, it never made it to them, sir.
Yeah, the trickle-down effect doesn't work very well.
Yeah, no.
So when did you notice that you saw a void and you're like, you know what, I need to develop a course and your company to help people get into law enforcement? Where did you notice that gap?
I'd love to give you some, holy grail answer on this one. What this was I knew that my time in law enforcement, even though I was on the younger side at the time, I knew that my physical limitations in law enforcement were coming to a head. I had multiple major orthopedic surgeries before I turned 30, and it was slowing down. Plus, I was starting to have concerns that I might have to use a different tool on my duty belt than another officer if one of my injuries winded up, like if my shoulder dislocated. Another officer that wouldn't have that issue could be able to physically restrain someone. I didn't want to have to, use a level of force that wouldn't be necessary with an officer that would be fit for duty. So with me gaining all my instructorships, I saw a lack in any of that training. I mean, we'll just take firearms. When I became a firearms instructor, for a federal law enforcement firearms instructor, the number one thing I suspended officers for was failing their firearms qual. Number one thing. And we only had it twice a year, right?
Really?
Number one thing I'd fail an officer. One of my kind of time military, one of my colleagues that I went through the academy with FLETC with, he was failing his pistol qual in FLETC to pass the academy. I'm like, what's going on, man? You're a Marine. He's like, I've never touched a pistol a day in my life. He's like, Marines, we only train with rifles. Or at least his job or his MOS did. I was like, man, I wouldn't, being Navy, and you think I would have known that, but I didn't, And so when I saw that gap in training in general, I was like, okay, I can fill this. So that's what I did. I did what every veteran and every prior law enforcement officer does. I started a consulting firm. I said, I'm going to teach everything, absolutely everything. Tactical medicine, CPR, firearms, professional development, all of it. And it was slow traction at first. So once again, reached out to some good mentors and advisors, and they said, hey, let's try this. Let's just go to social media and put out all your knowledge, see what hits. I was like, okay, I'm not really good at social media and hadn't been in front of a camera before. So if you watch my earlier stuff, it's real entertaining. But I put it all out there. And what really hit was how to become a police officer. I put out a video that said, compared to my 13 views at some times opposed to 10,000 views on how to become a police officer. And at this point in time, I was in law school. So I was like, man, and I pretty much had a free ride to law school. I wound up earning almost a full scholarship to law school. And it was a full scholarship with what left I had on my GI Bill. And so I had to make that determination whether or not to stop law school and fully go all in on the business. And I did. I was like, you know what? So many times people have come to me and asked me, how do I become a law enforcement officer? How do I become a cop? How do I get into federal law enforcement? What about local? And one of my business mentors in the past said, if you know the question that people always ask you and you can answer that question and people want the answer to it, there's a business behind it. And so I did that. And then the more and more I did, the more and more I learned and heard from individuals and saw the struggles. And a lot of times it's not even the candidate. They just don't understand the legal jargon behind it. Or sometimes it's even the departments, or maybe not even the departments, the third party evaluators that they hire that have no stock in the person getting hired. So they don't care. They're like, I already got paid for you. Get out of my office. The more time you spend in my office, the less I'm making an hour. And that could be a psychologist, that could be a polygrapher, that could even be a background investigator if they're hiring out a third-party organization. So that's really how there wasn't some big moment. It was just slow, steady growth and finding out and niching down to what people were really wanting.
Yeah, that's really amazing because you said you had a full ride to law school. You were in law school or you were getting ready to start law school?
Yeah, I was in law school. Yeah.
And you're like, I don't want to be a lawyer. Let's go ahead and do this. So what, like, there has to be something else that was like, yeah, this is the bet I want to go. What was that like?
So I'd already started working on law enforcement recruitment and development, and I'm going to get in so much trouble for this. I hope they don't say it. So I applied to the U.S. Air Marshals with the intent of accepting a job potentially, if they offered it to me. I left the military because I wanted to be family oriented. Right. I didn't want to be deployed. I didn't want my wife to have to raise our children alone. We left DC, right, for the sheer fact that that's not where I wanted to raise my little girls. I wanted to raise my little girls back home in Western North Carolina. So I applied when I started the business and everything, I was still working as a federal law enforcement officer. And I said, hey, hon, I think it's time to step away. Financially, we're okay. I can do it. And I'm going to start the company. And I started the company while I was in my last couple months of law enforcement. And I just transitioned and I was doing odds and ends, making a little bit here and there, like I said, teaching different classes and things. But, forget we were about a year in and my wife asked me, Kelly, she said, well, what's the next step? What are we going to do if this doesn't work? And she's this most supportive person when it came to running a business. She never had doubts in me or anything like that. But she said, is there a backup plan? I was like, well, there's the U.S. Air Marshals and there's law school, right? And I was always real big in legal and law enforcement. I was always ethical, by the books. Sometimes that would push other officers away from me to where they wouldn't even be around. Hey, it's going to be by the book if you ride with me. Yep. So with that, I was going through the U.S. Air Marshals and I was using that actually as training for the other. So I was like, hey, this is how you do it. Look, I'll show you. And I would go do a board interview. And then I go do a PT test. And then I go do a SAC interview or senior agent in charge interview. And I was passing them. And it's simple. Don't worry about it. Right. And at the same point in time, I was studying for my LSATs. I think I studied for the LSATs for like a week. I was, and at the same point in time, I was working nights and I was running the company at nights because me and my wife had our first daughter. And for the life of us, we could not find childcare. We tried babysitters. They didn't work. All the childcare was full for like a year backlog. So I was doing stay-at-home dad during the day and working nights. Felt like I was right back in law enforcement. But yeah, no, it winded up happening along those lines. And when I was in law school, like I said, I was early in my first semester of law school, and I was speaking to those advisors like, hey, what do I do? This is taking off, and they say, hey, people want to know this stuff. So start making more content on it, start developing an online course. And when I looked into what it would take to really do that, I said, hey, I can't give my full effort to law school for this. And then the U.S. Air Marshals, the reason why I went law school and not them was because I told my wife, I was like, hey, it's pretty much like me being in the military. I'll be gone a lot. And she was like, I don't necessarily know if that's what I want for our family. So law school it was. I was commuting back and forth to law school. And then, like I said early on, everything started taking off and I had to make the decision, do I pull out of law school and give up the free ride and go all in on my business and myself? And that's what I did.
Well, you took a bet on yourself and it worked. I would bet on myself any day of the week, just like you did. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the company that you currently have now?
Yeah, so our company, ACT, it's Armageddon Consulting and Training. We help law enforcement candidates succeed through the hiring process and as well through, transitioning into law enforcement. succeeding in the academy. And then as we've been scaling and growing, we keep adding new developmental things. Recently we just added a new fitness instructor for all our members. They have access to her now, and she's running fitness train live sessions where you can watch the recording. She's running those twice a week. We offer coaching programs. We have a group coaching community and a one-on-one coaching program. And then we have an online course that is also tied into both of those. So if you get any of our coaching, you get access to the online course, or you can just sign up for the online course if you wanted. One of the things that we do with the actual coaching is you have to be evaluated by myself or another one of the instructors, just because we don't want someone joining the coaching program and spending money if there's nothing we could do to help them. If someone comes in and says, I've been dishonorably discharged from the military, or I'm a convicted felon, have a good day. There's nothing we can do to help you. Those are automatic disqualifiers.
Yeah. So what is the success rate without any type of course? Let's say I'm 21, I graduated from college, or I skipped out on college, went to local community college, I went to the service, now I'm out and I want to join. What is the success rate of joining without a course?
Yeah, so let's just look at it from a number perspective. I think that would just be the easiest way for me to do it. Let's say we have a smaller department or a small mid-sized department that only has a few vacancies. Let's say they have 10 vacancies. They might get 500 to 1,000 applications for those 10 vacancies, depending on where they're located and how beneficial that department would be, or how sought after that department would be, right? So we'll say 500 applications. Well, out of those 500 applications, you're going to cut, so you're one of 500 at that point, you're going to cut out at least half, at least. Let's just say they made mistakes on their applications, and maybe they are some eligible people in there, but let's say some of them get marked ineligible. By the time we get to testing, which would be written exam and physical exam, typically, maybe if we had 10 billets, maybe we'd test 100 candidates, maybe we test 100 candidates, or we'd invite 100 candidates. And out of those 100 candidates, we get 50 of them, or yeah, we'll just use round them. We'll get 50 to pass, right? 50 to pass written exam and physical exam and go to board interview. Out of those 50, we would go, if we only have 10 open billets, you would do board interviews and we'd only take the top 20. We take the top 20 top interviews and move them into backgrounds, knowing we're going to lose at least half of them in backgrounds. And that's the way this is. So 1 in 500. If you're just winging, and when I say 1 in 500, you can do so many things to better increase your chances. So I was doing another podcast and they said, man, it sounds like a game. No, it's just any other employment. It's just this one, they're making you jump through a lot more hoops. A typical hiring process has 11 phases from application all the way up to final offer, typically. Each one of those you have to pass or you get removed.
Wow. So it's incredibly competitive, and joining and signing up and joining your coaching program. What is the success rate that you've seen, by joining your program?
I will say the main number that we track is our one-on-one coaching, because we work so closely with them, and you have coaching. We tell everyone the same thing. You have coaching until one of two things happen. You get hired, or you tell me you no longer want to pursue law enforcement, and I really don't accept option number 2. So with that, we have about an 80% success rate with our one-on-ones. Now, once again, every candidate is screened during an initial coaching call to make sure that we feel we can actually help them. So about 80%, and the other 20% is pretty much individuals that just don't follow through with the program.
Okay. Which is about right in any program that you would follow. There's always that 80-20 rule where 80% of the people are not doing things and 20%, fall on the bottom. Or you spend 20% of your time focusing on things that you shouldn't be focusing on anyway.
That's so true. Like I said, we're blessed in the way that, we get about 80% through, but only for the sheer fact that we are breathing down their necks the entire time. And that's the difference between one-on-one and community coaching. Community coaching, you still have access to an individual instructor, but he or she is not, constantly coming at, where are we at with this? Why didn't you get this homework done this week? Everything like that.
Yeah. That one-on-one coaching is critically important. And I've been doing interviews for the last 6 years. Coaching has been the main topic of that. And I have seen, and just as you just attested to, folks who undergo coaching, especially one-on-one coaching, are significantly more successful than those who just kind of join a peer group or who just join a community and kind of go along with it. So I think you're doing great work, Frank. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you were like, you know what, I really wish you asked me this question?
I don't necessarily know if there's any one particular thing. What I would say is that for anyone, whether they're, and I can only speak to my own personal experiences, but if there's anyone out there that is looking to decide how to pursue a life in public service, whether that be military, law enforcement, EMT, anything that's going to have some type of .gov at the end of it. Everything that you do in life is going to be evaluated and judged. So it doesn't matter if you're applying for the military. I mean, yeah, recruiters will sometimes just say, "Oh, just don't mention anything." Well, that will backfire when you got to do a polygraph for a TS clearance or for law enforcement. So that would be the only thing that I'd want to add. Plus the fact that I appreciate you taking the time to have me on and share the story around a little bit. But that would be just about it.
No, absolutely, Frank. And for everyone listening to this and watching this, go into the description of this episode. You're going to be able to find the links to his business. And if you don't mind, I'll share your LinkedIn as well and any socials he has. So that way you could reach out to him and his team if you're interested in law enforcement or any other type of one-on-one coaching that he might be able to help you with. So, Frank, thank you for stopping by and being on the show. I really appreciate it.
It's truly my pleasure, and thank you.
Thank you.